Do you ever lose interest in dealing with or debating women?
It does get monotonous at times because it ends up becoming the same typical debate. But every time I do it and I get annoyed, I remind myself that there's someone that's probably seeing this for the first time, that's probably being exposed to these concepts for the first time. So, so some people might say it's redundant. I think it's very important because there's more guys waking up every single day, right? A new guy is Googling how to get back my girlfriend, or why did she leave me, or why did I get divorced, or why did she cheat on me? There's a new guy Googling that every single day. And they find content like mine, like find content like yours, and we provide the answers to these guys because, unfortunately, this is a big problem for a lot of men. And I predict as social media becomes more advanced, as we become more and more attached to our phones, as online dating and social media becomes more and more prominent as a way to meet people, this problem is only going to be exacerbated. It's going to get worse because, unfortunately, when you go on the internet and you use dating apps or you use Instagram, whatever, that puts the ball in the women's court, right? Because the men are the ones approaching them. And what ends up happening is a majority of men just end up becoming invisible to a majority of women, right? And I've kind of figured this out from like years of talking to different women. We've talked to like almost 4,000 women now. The startling reality that I'm starting to see as I talk to more and more women, especially, women that are 18, 19, younger women, is the average man no longer qualifies for the average woman, right? I meet girls, they're average, nothing special about them, typical background, etc. But when I ask them, what do you want in return? They're expecting an exceptional man, right? And I do think a big part of this is because of the social media climate, the internet, the ease of meeting people. All of this is kind of increase women's standards without them necessarily reciprocating on their end and becoming exceptional women. They want exceptional men while bringing an average, individual to the relationship.
Let me ask you one more question. This whole B Simone conversation, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but a lot of it is tied around her responsibility, so to speak, or
Mm-hmm.
people's perception of her responsibility to actually help her friend who was not necessarily as financially well off as her. As a
Okay.
person that kind of leads a platform in which you employ multiple different people, when you kind of had the responsibility of making sure that people get paid and stuff like that, how do you feel about the whole responsibility as a person that is a leader or is generating a lot of revenue to help friends out or to put people on or to make sure that other people are successful also? Like, how do you feel about that whole sentiment and what other people believe is the responsibility of a person that is a breadwinner?
Yeah. I think it's your duty. One of the things that I've like really been big on is, obviously when I got my start on YouTube in the red pill space with certain YouTubers, as Fresh Fit became bigger and bigger and became a bit more mainstream and kind of got out of that, single red pill niche. One of the things we've prided ourselves on is we bring those guys that helped us get put on and grow our channel in the early stages. We like to bring them back on the show and expose them to our more mainstream audience that they might have otherwise not been able to get exposed to. And I look at that as kind of, I call it retracting the ladder back, where the people that helped you get up, you don't retract the ladder, rather you keep the ladder there so they can come up and you help them up. I'm
Yeah.
real big on that, right? I've brought a lot of people on that, you know, for the first time they're getting out in front of a mainstream audience, but I think that that's kind of my duty, where if we make it, the people that helped us get there, we should bring them up too. Now, I know some people, they'll make it and then they'll retract the ladder, right? And then they won't let those people come up with them because they want to be the star. I think that's a very bad way to move, because what ends up happening is you basically say, oh, I can't bring them up because they're going to be too powerful and I'll lose my influence. No, bring them up and then let the better man win. But a lot of people don't have that foresight. They kind of look at it like, oh, I made it, they helped me, but I'm not going to bring that up. So
Yeah.
that's my take on it. I do think that if you're the guy where a bunch of people are around you and they helped you get to that position, I think it's treacherous to not help them and bring them up alongside you. Because honestly, I look at it like, as you go up, the likelihood of you being backstabbed is going to go higher and higher and higher. Because
Yeah.
as you make more money and you become more famous and you reach different plateaus, the people that you meet, they typically got there through some, snakery. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
best, if anything, to take the people with you that started with you and bring them up, because at least you know where their loyalty lies. And then when you win, they win by default. So I think, if anything, it's better to bring your people up with you than go ahead and try to create a new infrastructure with people that haven't been vetted.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's a burden that comes along with that a lot of people don't understand. but I think it's a healthy burden. I think it's just a manly thing, honestly. I don't think that that's a sentiment that a lot of women truly understand. I think that a lot of times women look at it as a competition with their friends, versus actually spending more time trying to cultivate and create a network, or an environment where everybody else can thrive a lot of times. So
Now, this is going to be a controversial take, but I'll say it anyway. I don't think women have the capability of the same loyalty as men, and I'll explain what I mean by this. So, the women's psyche is a psyche of extracting resources. And what I mean by this from a biological sense, right? Like, obviously we're in modern society, women can make their own money, women can go ahead and fend for themselves, etc. Great. We understand that in modern society. However, the reality is women are still physically inferior to men, women are still smaller than men, weaker than men, etc. So there's still primitive biological traits within their mind that dictate the way they behave. So for example, men, we don't need to see other men with our women to know that our woman's attractive. We have the ability to look her up and down. I find her attractive. Cool. I don't need social proof to be attracted to her. Women don't operate that way. They see a guy, if he's by himself, oh, he's maybe handsome, but if he's there with 5 girls, oh, who is this guy? I kind of want to get to know him. So women make a lot of their decisions based off of the herd and the social dynamics, right? This is why men that have social status that are ugly are still able to get very attractive women, but it might not necessarily work the other way around, where a woman that's ugly that has social status might not necessarily be able to pull the same caliber of guy, right, on her level. So that's kind of where the disconnect comes. So I say that to kind of paint the picture and the foundation that women are inherently not loyal because that is detrimental to their survival. If a woman's with a man and that man shows that he can no longer provide, protect, provision, and he can't maintain his duties, what ends up happening is she'll look to another guy that can, because, 1,000 years ago, this incompetency can get her killed. Not her, just her, but her child as well. So she has a vested interest in not just protecting herself, but her offspring. And if the man cannot provide that value for her and her offspring, well, her job is to survive alongside the children. Her duty is to herself and her children first. So if the man can't do his job, she leaves. This is why women initiate most breakups. This is why when women do break up with you, they feel almost no guilt, no resentment. They break up with you months in advance, right? And they find, we call it monkey branching, right, on this side of the internet. But this is how they're able to kind of get and find another guy right away. So I would argue that it behooves women to not be loyal because it is counteractive to their survival strategy. Whereas for us, men, we have the ability to not just have our beliefs, but we can fight to defend our beliefs, right? Every revolution was led by men for a reason. Men will pick up a sword to fight for their belief system, or a gun or a rifle. Women can't do that. So since they can't do that, they must align themselves with the strongest men that can ensure their survival. This is why, back in the day, a dude would have the top guy, Genghis Khan, would have all the women. Why? Because he would ensure their survival. It doesn't go the other way around. So with men, I think the reason why it's a masculine trait to be loyal and stand by your bros is because we're looked at as warriors and we can stand and defend ourselves and our brethren. Women can't do that. So we don't hold them to the same standard, right? There's a reason why it's called I'm a man of my word, right? And not I'm a woman of my word. There's a reason why when they say be a man, man up, 9 out of 10 times that means taking responsibility for not just yourself, but for other people. Women aren't held to these same standards. As much as people might say that's sexist or misogynistic, it's true. We almost infantilize women. And then if they do want to rise up and be responsible, we applaud it. Cool, you're responsible and you're loyal. But as a man, you're expected to do that. For women, if they do it, it's, extra credit. For us, we must do it. It's mandatory. And if you don't do it, you're considered a bitch, and we have social norms in place to embarrass you and to shame you for not adhering or being loyal, right? Being a snake as a woman is completely acceptable, but being a snake as a man, that's met with a certain level of vitriol, even more so because we're supposed to be honorable, right? That's the reason why, like, when the two men meet and they shake hands, that's supposed to be something, right? Scarface famously said, Al Pacino, all I have in this world is my balls and my word. That's a masculine thing. It's not a feminine thing because women inherently cannot be loyal based off their biology.
So do you?
Okay,
So
I gotta jump.
well, hold
in
on. Let me ask this one last question, and then you got it, Q Diddy.
Right.
So by that, do you think that we should not hold women accountable or as accountable when they decide to move on based off of their circumstances or based off of the whole mindset of survival or leveling up when they then go with a different guy?
That's a good question because we're taking a biological urge and how they're wired and we're trying to apply new social standards to that biological wiring.
Right.
You know, I think the best way to approach this is I think men need to understand the fundamental wiring of women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understand that in their mind. So when some bullshit does pop off, they're not surprised. I think one of the biggest reasons why so many guys get their heart broken or they get angry or, you know, a lot of it comes from frustration of not understanding women, right? It's not that it's as bad. It's rather it's the lack of knowledge and the lack of awareness that drives men to say, what the hell, I did everything right. And it's that inability to figure it out that really frustrates them, which makes sense. If you look at like the world around us, right? The ingenuity, the internet, the fact that we're on computers and microphones, etc. This all came from the man's yearning to, you know, make life better and figure things out. So whenever we're not able to figure things out, especially with women, men get very frustrated, right? You can figure out how to, you know, go to the moon, but they can't figure out how to keep women happy. So, you know, so I think with men, I think the biggest thing is understanding how women think and how they behave and understanding the rudimentary biological background, as negative as that may be. And then that will make everything else make sense. So when she does break up with you, or when she does leave you, or when something that you didn't plan for does happen, you can always go back and say, okay, I understand. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be angry, but you just being able to understand will make things a lot more peaceful. You'll be able to get over it sooner. You'll be able to say, you know what? It is what it is. She didn't like me anymore. My value, I got lazy, whatever. Hypergamy kicked in, and then you can move on to another girl because you kind of understand what it is. But a lot of guys
100% agree, because I've always said that my one rule, my only rule, is I will never stop you from leaving. Mm-hmm. I am not trying to hold on to you. Once it's over, it just is what it is, and you know, that's just life. Go ahead, Q Diddy. I know you had something that you was gonna say.
It wasn't
and
much.
Anybody else could jump in this also, but go ahead.
Myron said a lot, but I just don't want the chat to like. Don't let that deter you from the fact that women are still fucking dumb.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we make jokes all the time. And the reason for that is because there's simply not a burner performance, right? So if a girl is intelligent, think about it, right? If a woman is intelligent, we actually like commemorate that. We're like, wow, like you're actually sharp. Like, wow, like we praise that. Well, why do we praise it? Because it's not common. You know, what's the stereotype? If a girl's pretty, right, she's dumb. But if you find a girl that's pretty and smart, beauty and brains, as they say, right, that's something that's novel because it's not that common, because there isn't a burden of performance on women to be pretty and be intelligent. There really isn't. If they do it, it's extra credit, but if they don't, it's no big deal. But there's no such thing as handsome and smart or some kind of idiom for that. Like, no, you're just supposed to get it as a guy. If you're not competent, you deal with consequences for being an idiot. Women aren't held to the same standard. Now, I know people might say that's misogynistic or sexist, but it's the truth. You can be a woman with 60 IQ and meet a man that's extremely successful and have your life taken care of. It doesn't work the other way around as a guy. If you got 60 IQ as a dude, you're cooked. You're going to have a very tough time, you know, finding a partner, let alone getting out of your basement with the Cheeto crumbs on your fucking shirt. So that's the difference between, you know, male excellence versus female excellence.
Does anybody else have anything in this?
Money by the ton. I get more bitches than you, your daddy, and your uncles, nigga. Shut the fuck up.
Here we go. No, I 100% agree. I don't think it's anything that you said that I disagree with.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, man, is like, that's why content like this is so important to kind of like educate guys. Cause like, even though, you know, like me and you, Anton, right? We've been doing this for a few years now. We might get annoyed going over the same talking points or same studies or whatever, kind of educating men on the way women think. But, you know, I always think to myself, you know, there's someone that might be hearing this for the first time that's thinking about ending it all. And then them hearing this makes them push back, you know, the thing. I'll tell you guys a story that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. There was this guy. He told me that, you know, he was having troubles with his girlfriend, and, you know, he wanted to end it all. He found a tree out in a very nice area where it had an overlook of the sunset. And he had the day, time, the rope, and the, you know, the plans of how he was going to do it. And he said before he died, he wanted to look at one more beautiful thing. And like a day or two before he was going to go through with it, he was on YouTube and he found one of my videos. And he said that watching that video led him down a rabbit hole, and it helped him understand why he had the troubles that he had with, you know, relationships or whatever. And he ended up not doing it. And now to this day, he sent me a message. I still keep it to this day. I save it on my phone, where he said, you know, he's making 6 figures now. He has a family and he has a wife. And I was like, holy crap. Like, if I decided like, oh man, I'm tired of talking about this topic, I'm going to stop. And then he didn't, you know, see that stream, or maybe he didn't see that video, who knows what would be happening now, right? So this information was able to keep someone alive so you can go ahead and have a family. And, you know, that profound effect is kind of what has me doing this still, even though I dislike sometimes talking to women. I'm not going to lie, it gets annoying sometimes, but I understand that redundancy is required because there's guys that need to hear this stuff over and over and over again so it gets through their head.
Hey, Myra.
Yo.
Do you know who Tony Martin is?
I don't, but I can look him up real quick.
He's a professor. He wrote the I don't even want to say it on here. The Jay Onslaught. He wrote this book. I think you should look into it.
I'm looking at him right now. You said the Jay Onslaught?
Yeah, he wrote the Jay Onslaught. Yeah, he had a little conflict with those folks some years ago. But
okay.
Check them out, man.
Okay, I'm pulling it up right now. Interesting. Okay, I already know I'm gonna like this. But yeah, man, you know, it's a very sensitive topic, but you know, I think once people understand, and that's why I you know, once you understand Middle Eastern foreign policy, to kind of bring it back to that topic real quick, you'll totally understand why we do a lot of the things that we do and why we have the laws in place and the lobbies in place and why we fight the wars that we fight. And I think it's very important for Americans to understand, right, that like, you know, a lot of these conflicts that we've had recently isn't really for American interests. Like the Iraq War, for example, is one of the biggest failures ever, right? And it had nothing to do with 9/11. That's the crazy part. Like when I tell people the truth about the Iraqi war and how Saddam Hussein had absolutely nothing to do with Osama bin Laden, people look at me like I'm crazy. But the reality is that, you know, Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were actually sworn enemies. Yeah, and I could quickly go over this. The story, basically, it's this. In the 1980s, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. And Osama bin Laden, who is a wealthy heir to a very successful construction company in Saudi Arabia, went to Afghanistan to fight the Soviets. He went ahead and created a militia called the Mujahideen. They fought the Soviets and they actually won. But the CIA and American intelligence also gave Osama a significant amount of assistance and aid, and they were able to win the conflict. So fast forward to the early 90s, Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait. Kuwait strategically is a, you know, oil-rich country, and Saddam was angry because after the war, he owed a lot of money. The Kuwaitis didn't want to lower the price, whatever, a lot of, you know, money disputes. So he invades, takes over within 24 hours because the Kuwaitis don't have a real military. This obviously creates a lot of problems for Saudi Arabia. Their security, and their national security has an issue now. So Osama returns to Saudi Arabia because he's Saudi Arabian. And he says, look, he tells the royal family, I will fight on your behalf. I just beat the Russians. We can stop this guy. The royal family looks at him and says, thanks, but no thanks. We have the U.S., we have the petrodollar set up. They're going to protect us. No, thank you. And this infuriated Osama bin Laden because he looked at it like, why are Americans who are not Muslims fighting on Holy Land on behalf of Saudi Arabia? This is unacceptable. Now, Saudi Arabia doesn't have freedom of speech. You can ask, you know, Khashoggi about that. So what ended up happening was they banned him from the country and sent him off in exile. He went to Sudan for several years in the 90s. This is where he became radicalized and created the Al-Qaeda that we know now. And this kind of began the resentment of his attitude towards America. And then on top of that, our aid of Israel and our support of Israel to assist them with, you know, toppling many Arab governments in Muslim countries and bombing them. This also aided in his anger towards what led to 9/11. Now, why do I say this? I say this because our, you know, neocon administration during the Bush era, as well as Israeli intelligence, lied and said that Saddam was involved with Osama and Al-Qaeda because of passing information or meeting somewhere in Asia with anthrax. That's not true. It's objectively false. And then we found out when we went and invaded Iraq and there was no weapons of mass destruction. The reality is Osama and Saddam hated each other, and Osama was prepared to fight Saddam to keep him from invading Saudi Arabia. So that's the real story between them that the mainstream media never covers because it destroys their narrative that they hate us because we're free. That's not true. It's an objective lie.